out of 10. Due to substantial revisions and new content since its debut, we have re-examined Warframe as it is in 2019 and produced a new review to reflect its current state.
In 2013, a sci-fi loot grind starring a cast of space ninjas was an inspired concept. In our original review, we praised the fast-paced gameplay, but it was clear that Warframe lacked meaningful features that took advantage of its strengths. Now, in 2019, Warframe has evolved, and it's much more than just space ninjas brawling in corridors. It takes a decidedly unorthodox approach with its non-linear adventure, sometimes frustratingly so. Yet journeying across Warframe's massive universe is as satisfying as it is endearing. Throughout the sprawling campaign, you slash, shoot, and free run through different missions with an impressive amount of freedom to take on different objectives. There's a staggering amount of activities to dive into, and with well over 40 hyper-stylized frames to utilize, there's a constant sense of fun and surprise when discovering how deep it all runs. To play Warframe can often feel like playing a larger game of catch-up with 6 years of content, but it's a game that definitely rewards patience. As most missions are set on standalone levels across the star chart, the game's piecemeal structure ultimately makes the massive game more digestible. Despite its growth over the years, Warframe's roots are still firmly planted in its fast-paced and satisfying combat, which is intuitive enough for newcomers to dive into. The overall speed and flexibility in its action are excellent, and there's a constant sense of grace that can make even the ordinary missions thrilling, giving way to the most gratifying and stylish encounters. The true star of Warframe are the various frames, with each one possessing its own traits and abilities. It always feels rewarding when you find a new frame, especially ones that are highly specialized. These include the stealth-oriented Ash, the aquatic alien tentacle summoning Hydroid, and the bard-like Octavia, who can craft music to amplify your abilities and attack enemies. You have free reign to experiment with unique frames, and it can be especially fun strengthening them with powerful mods and armaments that can melt through enemies. It's also impressive how in-depth customization is in Warframe, and it's rare to find another player who has your same style and loadout. While the core combat is often satisfying, it's still common to see a streak of highly repetitive missions, most of which recycle assets for procedurally generated levels and objective types. This repetition can create a recurring feeling of déjà vu, and there were times when this left me feeling exhausted after an extended session. Warframe does try to inject a number of variations to mix this up though. Some missions incorporate the use of the Arcwing, switching up the familiar action sequences with deep space shooter levels. There's even a set of PvP game types, such as the Conclave and Duel modes, with the latter letting you invite another player to a clan dojo to engage in a solo fight. But when compared to the PvE experience, the competitive activities come across as exceedingly basic and clunky. Warframe takes a mostly hands-off approach in getting you in the rhythm of cutting down mobs of enemies and boosting your frame's strength by collecting mods. However, this can sometimes create feelings of aimlessness, which is magnified when it becomes apparent that there isn't a traditional endgame to work up to. Warframe is a challenging game to crack. If you're committed to figuring out the intricacies of the game, then using online guides to understand its in-depth mechanics is a must. These resources are a big help, but it's disappointing how often you have to use them, as opposed to the game itself teaching you the same information. Without them, learning these systems on your own can be a significant test in patience. Fortunately, Warframe does have an active and open community to seek assistance from, and you can directly interact with others at various social spaces across different planets. Stick with the game long enough, and you'll unlock access to the more involved cinematic story missions in open-world settings, which left me wanting to invest more time to continue interacting with Warframe's characters. In the Plains of Eidolon and the Orb Valis, you can take in the sights of the large-scale worlds, engage in dynamic bounties and events with squads, and even learn more about the brewing conflict within each setting. The Valis' story is especially engaging, dealing with workers' rights and the perils of late-stage capitalism in the interstellar age.
We work for a living. We don't need no trouble, and we don't need no one getting hurt.
I'm continually pleased with the flexibility of Warframe's many systems, and how it allows for you to attain a variety of rewards at your own pace. Of course, there's an assortment of items, weapons, and even frames to purchase with real money or with Platinum, Warframe's premium currency. Fortunately, most items in the game are attainable through gameplay, allowing you to get into the nitty-gritty of the game's content mostly unabated. The economy of Warframe is very active, and if you're resourceful enough, you can even trade some of your own gear and blueprints with other players for Platinum as well. When new content is introduced, the pathway to experiencing the quest or acquiring the next frame is available to all players. This relaxed approach is reassuring, especially for a game of this magnitude, and I generally found acquiring gear and new classes to be quite manageable. However, there are still some time sinks that feel mostly arbitrary, resulting in the expected and sometimes lengthy grind that's commonplace in free-to-play games. To that end, the primary intent of Platinum is to circumvent both investments of time and resources. It's interesting how much Warframe has improved, yet also how much has stayed the same over the years. Though it still has issues with repetition and lack of explanations for its more complex systems, it's managed to overcome their severity by introducing so many events and revisions that continue to elevate the game. There are some expected bouts of frustration to be found, but I always manage to center myself once I move on to other opportunities. In a lot of ways, that's what Warframe manages to do best. Just when you feel like you've hit a lull, a better and more fulfilling opportunity will likely present itself. Perhaps most importantly, Warframe makes sure that the time spent in its world is almost always well